GM, so I have added to my Bitcoin long. This compound order, which was a limit order that I set, got filled, and so far we've seen a nice move. And this was detailed exactly on yesterday's video. While everyone was getting bearish, I told you guys I'm adding to my Bitcoin long. Here's why. I told you my limit order that was set, and that has now pushed up from this Sunday gap into this upper gap which we previously lost. And remember, this compounded long was using the 50% profits that I took yesterday back at 105,273. So playing with house money here, because I sold near the highs, bought back near the lows, using those profits, that now allows me to compound my trade while keeping my risk minimized. So that's Bitcoin. Setup's played out pretty well so far. And well, what have we seen? So in yesterday's video, I talked about how you want to look for a higher low on this Sunday gap over here. That's where bulls need to step in, because if you lose that, then potentially we're going for a retest of the lows and bears are in control. And well, that's exactly what we got. This blue path over here, we held this Sunday gap, bulls stepped in, found demand there, and we pushed up. Now we do need to get above this previous gap that we lost, so above 105.8k. That would show some strength from bulls. And the final show of strength would be closing above this range low at 107.2k, which we previously found resistance at. This is where sellers have showed up. So if we get above there, that is a show of strength and should lead to continuation higher towards this next gap between 108.3 to 109.4k. And that's where the high time frame SR is. So that's what you need to look for. Bulls need to start reclaiming some of those levels to set up for continuation higher. And if we do then make a new high, that confirms the higher low over here that I talked about. And this would just be another higher low. So that's why I took the long setup. Of course, got to look at all scenarios. So bearish scenario would be now coming back down, losing Sunday's gap, which we've held, back testing it as resistance. If that happens, then you can expect continuation lower. And from there, we have to reassess. Are we going to retest these lows at 100k or maybe even downside continuation? But so far, so good. That's why we're long. Mentioned to you guys in my Discord, this big open interest build up on this downtrend here, which means that if price stops and goes sideways and bottoms out at this Sunday gap, all of these shorts would have to close. And that's exactly what played out to the T. Look at this open interest going down while price goes up. It's clearly indicative of all of these shorts who should have closed at support, who didn't. They now have to close on the way up. They get forced out, which can produce energy for this rally. Because if you're short from the highs over here and you don't take profits, you're at risk of a squeeze because the market isn't agreeing with you anymore. If you're short and price is at support, what do you need? Well, it's very simple. You need the support to break. And then sure, shorts are right, and it would actually have been longs that were offside in this open interest. Because remember, open interest is both a long and a short opening. But in this scenario, support held, and that's why these shorts have to close out here, which we're seeing already playing out this morning. So good stuff. Longs have been more aggressive than spot in this move. So waiting for the New York session to see, can we get the ETFs really bidding and following through? That's what's going to allow us to close above this gap, maybe even close above the range low if we can get some spot demand in. Otherwise, of course, bearish path can happen. If we lose this Sunday gap and backtest it as resistance, that would be the trigger for lower and more chop to come. So that's what I'll be looking at in terms of Bitcoin. So let's take a further dive into the lower time frame. So been talking about Monday's range, and it's a great way to trade. You wait for Monday's range to form, and then that sets up your trading bias for the rest of the week. And well, Monday's range started off like this. We then swept above it on Tuesday. That set a trap where bulls get long, hoping for a breakout. We then close back inside, bearish candle, and that bearish candle then leads to this downtrend. We then broke down from Monday's range, and the key sign was this, closing below the weekly open level. I've been mentioning this in every video now. When we closed below the weekly open, that was your early signal that we may break below Monday's range, and breaking below Monday's range led to the expansion move lower. But now, what bulls need to do when price was over here was reclaim Monday's range, reclaim the weekly open. It's as simple as that. And so far we have reclaimed Monday's range. We have reclaimed the weekly open. So I would love to see this weekly open just hold and price consolidate at it, of course, because I'm long. Not necessarily what's going to happen here. Maybe you're getting some signs of longs chasing a little bit, and we do the classic London move up and then New York flush. Maybe that happens. You saw it over here where you get the London move up, and then as soon as the New York session comes in, that's when you got the breakdown. So maybe we do have to lose and chop around the weekly open a little bit more. That's another scenario that would still be bullish. And then alternatively, if we start losing Monday's range, backtesting it as resistance, then the worry is that potentially we just set up a lower high there, and that would of course be bearish and could set up for downtrend continuation, depending on whether you then break down or bull hopium. Maybe you get some sort of failure to return or bottoming formation around this general area over here if we do go for a retest. So that's what I'd be looking for. Obviously, you've set a big gap over here now. Lots and lots of gaps. So can some of these gaps fill? Is probably better seen on the 4 hour. Yep. So we should get a fresh chart of Bitcoin. Of course, that is very difficult to find for me, but let's do it. Why not? Let's give it a go. Fresh chart. What are the odds? Take your bets. Yes. Clean chart. Lovely stuff. So we've got a gap over here, which is potentially forming. Of course, you've got 2 hours, 45 minutes to go. So this gap may not actually be here. It may actually be lower. So maybe something like the 2 hour is actually better over here. So this is what I'd be watching, this gap now. This is one of the impulse candle gaps, I believe, as well. Maybe not on MEXC, but anyway, if we hold this gap, then much of the same. You expect continuation higher. If we lose the gap, then that's what triggers bears being in control, because in uptrends, bullish gaps should hold, like the green path over here. And if that gets invalidated, you don't see the bullish gaps hold, and you actually trade completely through them and backtest them as resistance. So that's what I'd be looking for. Maybe it's just a shallow dip, but this gap that's been set this morning on this big impulse move up between 103.6 and 104.5, can that hold on any dips? If so, expect continuation higher. And that can set up a move where we then potentially come up towards Monday's range. And we'll go back to that chart now. So Monday's range is set here. We, of course, want to make a new high, and that coincides with the range low level and levels I talked about before, but staying above the weekly open's the main thing, or reclaiming it if we do chop around it. That's your pivot level now for the week, because that determines whether this weekly candle is green or red. And of course, green candles are what's going to offer our best long setup. So that's how I'd be playing it on Bitcoin. That's what I'm looking at. Let's take a look at the wider market. Let's look at Ethereum. So ETH, very similar to Bitcoin. Look what happened last night. Analysis played out super well. So we couldn't reclaim the weekly open. Wicked into it. Buyers failed to get above it and hold. We then lost the compression pattern over here. That was your early warning sign that Monday's range was going to break, and then we broke below it, and that led to expansion lower. Since then, we've reclaimed Monday's range, so first, good sign for bulls. We've not reclaimed the weekly open on ETH, so that's the relative weakness that you're seeing on ETH over Bitcoin. It's just not time yet. I've been saying over and over, if you want to focus on ETH longs over Bitcoin, you just want to see your market structure, which was last week's Monday candle over here, get reclaimed. Can we get above that? That would then denote a market structure break. Can we flip something like the 12 and 21 EMA bands green? Because at the moment they're still red, and you get long when these bands go green on ETH over Bitcoin. And while they're red, you actually want to be focusing on Bitcoin longs over ETH if the market is rising. So it's very simple. No triggers yet for ETH over Bitcoin. Maybe that changes, but got to get above this level at least to get that market structure break. So that's what I'll be looking at. That's why we're seeing ETH below its weekly open respectively, but that's probably the level to get above. Given that we've gapped up so inefficiently, we probably don't go there in one move. You've got all of these gaps now on ETH setting up on the 1 hour. So similar to Bitcoin, can we hold this gap and Monday range? We've just dips into it and then we eventually go higher. Or do we lose that gap and backtest it as resistance? That's what I'd be watching for in terms of Ethereum. So Monday's range has set up the trades that we want to be taking. Now let's look at the wider market. First of all, Bitcoin, just a quick reminder, I do have my eye on a potential short if we do get a nice inefficient move up around this gap over here. It'll be half our risk on both trades here for 1 hour total risk, and the aim is for a move, which is a move into the 50-day EMA like this that immediately rejects. Could get this scenario, but I'm playing it for a quick rejection rather than a reclaim and lose, which would maybe set up a second option. If these lose, maybe I take another swing at it. If we get above, trade above, then close below. But initially looking at a sweep of the 50-day EMA and immediate rejection in this scenario. So going to set some orders if we start pushing up inefficiently to short with 1 hour risk in total. And I'll keep you guys updated in the Discord on any trades I do take and if I do set these orders. So that's something to mention. Now back to the charts. Let's look at the wider market. So what's going on? Stocks, they've reclaimed this previous distribution area, testing it as support, so holding nicely. Now back into this previous distribution. Can they flip this level and potentially move up to the October FOMC? That will be interesting because the October rate cut was perceived as bearish by the markets, by Bitcoin, ETH, stocks. So maybe something's changing. Maybe there is this rally going into the government reopening soon, and we know the TGA will draw down. That's going to be liquidity positive. We know QT's end in December 1st. That's liquidity positive. Trump's talking about 2K tariff revenue checks to everyone in some sort of form. Maybe it's some sort of coupon, tax reduction, some sort of relief. Overall, 3 liquidity positive events, which I deep dived on the weekly outlook video. I'll pin it in the comments, but could we be seeing a rallying into that, trying to front run that government reopening? Maybe, and if so, I'd be looking at this October FOMC level to see how a price is actually reacting. And on Bitcoin, that's at 111.8k. So a lot of work to do to get there. I think that can be a target on any of these rallies. Probably an area where you'd expect price to reject, but there's a lot of price action in between there, a lot of gains to be made if we can see moves up into that level. So interesting to see. That'll be some days away if we do even make it there. ETH, of course, way below its October FOMC level. That's around 4.2k. And gold's been the bullish one. So been talking about gold a lot. Bullish since this daily open on Wednesday. Flipped above its October FOMC level. Went below, went below, chopped around it. But as soon as it got above this high, I said, look for longs. That will lead to momentum continuation higher. And you've hit my first liquidity target here. Hit my second liquidity target from over here. And now the final target is at 4.2k, which we're consolidating above these beautiful liquidity levels that I've been mentioning. They've been playing out nicely as support resistance. So, I mean, can we see gold now push up and break out and hit this target? And if so, that's the level where I would expect a rejection. Or if we flip it, then continuation higher, because that sets up gold to potentially being trading into this huge gap over here, where massive inefficient price action. When you trade into big gaps, it tends to trade through just as quickly as it did when the gap was forming. So that's what I'd be looking at. You either reject there, the gap holds bearishly, or you flip it. That can lead to continuation higher into the gap. But very strong on gold. That's what you want to see, reclaiming October FOMC levels and pushing up. That's what, hopefully, Bitcoin and stocks can do, but let's see. A lot of work to do. October FOMC level quite far away on Bitcoin. A little closer on stocks. A lot of work to do. A lot of distributing to get back above. Let's see if bulls can do it. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, help me get to 500 subscribers. You guys are the best supporting the channel. I've been cracking out videos every day, so if you value the content, I see the subs going up, I see the comments, see the likes. That really helps me out and lets me know I need to keep making some more videos for you guys. So, GM, I'll see you guys in morning markets tomorrow.